This is what happens, Alicia, when you're trying to do a live Q&A from a remote location and you're doing everything manually. I have become very, very accustomed to my little stream deck that I can use to advance. And so, welcome, guys, to Canadian Immigration Live Q&A, sponsored by the Canadian Immigration Institute today. And it is great to have Alicia. How are you doing, Alicia?
I'm well, Mark. How are you? How are things out there?
Good. Well, this is also sponsored by Elon Musk because his Starlink system is the thing that's given me enough bandwidth to do this. And it seems like it's going to be pretty okay. At least it appears that way. So it's good to have everybody here. And yeah, Amy says, here we go. I'm also, while we're doing this, I'm going to adjust a few things here to see if I can figure out how to get a better let's see here. Better comments. Okay, that'll probably work. We can sort that one out. All right. Okay, let's see who we got tuning in here, Alicia. So we did have Omar here from Somalia. This is great. Divine is in the house, which is awesome. Let's see here who else we have. Uh, okay, let's see. Oh, Fatima. Fatima Tamura. Excellent. Good to see you. And we've got Mohammed who's connecting in from Pakistan. Niravish is also, shout out to Niravish. And we've got Raman here, Facebook. Yes, we've got the Facebook connections, which are fantastic. I got to make sure that my audio isn't too loud here. Let's see what else we have here. Samrat is connecting in as well from Facebook. So we are having some interaction across all platforms, which is positive, which is very positive. Okay. All right. So yeah, so I am out at our family's cabin here out near Waterton, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if we can do this. And yesterday I did the live Q&A from the office. I was going to come out in the morning, but decided that it was better to take care of a bunch of things and then come out last night. So Simba's back over here. I don't know if you can see him. Well,
Not quite. Oh,
there's
there.
Simba. You see Simba, he's asleep on the pillow back there. That's his spot right there. So he's having a good old snooze right there, and then we're gonna go out and walk around and maybe fish a little bit. He's never been with me fishing before, and I have my waders and I walked out into the lake, which I don't think you guys can see. Maybe you can see it through the window there. I'm not sure. But anyways, I had my hip waders and I waded out yesterday, and he wasn't used to me going, and so he got nervous and he started to follow me out, and he was like paddling in the water, and well, let's just say he wasn't a very good swimmer, so we had to turn around and head back, and then he was whimpering for a while, but in the end he realized that life is tough sometimes and you just have to go figure out something else to entertain yourself. So he was cruising around checking out all these new places, and so yeah, so that's what I'm doing today. All right. And how about you? Do you have any big plans for the weekend, Alicia?
It looks nice. It stopped snowing in Calgary, which is great. So I'm hoping to get out and maybe plant the garden this weekend. I don't know. It's always a risk if you plant before May long weekend. So we'll see. I might do the cold hardy veggies.
That sounds like a plan. I had a garden for about 4 years, and I didn't have a large space, so we did square foot gardening. And in the end, it just never really grew like I wanted it to. And so it's gravel now. And I go fishing instead of weeding the garden now. All right, we've got EJ here. He's tuning in from Saudi Arabia. We've got Yasser here. Nimish is tuning in from Bangalore, India. Uh, and Raman is, yes, Facebook over in Vancouver. I wonder if it's nice and sunny out there yet, Raman. I wonder. And let's see, Samita says, how are you doing today? We're doing great. And okay, Reshmi says, you missed my super chat. I don't think I did, Reshmi. I don't think I did, because I did answer one of your questions. Maybe you missed it. But go ahead and pose your question again. Okay, Arroya is tuning in from Qatar. This is great. We've got Bong, who's also here. Hello, Bong. Peter Tim is connecting in. So we've got a really good group of people that are connected in today, which is awesome. Okay, so we better start off with Reshmi's, even though she's getting a 2-4 here. Okay, my husband is non-accompanying. Can I still take my dependent children to Canada? Where should I put that info? Reshmi, it is far more complicated than than something we can answer here in a live Q&A. Alicia, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can answer some general principles. I mean, we have no idea what kind of application this is, or whether it's a permanent resident application or a temporary resident application. But here's the issue when you have parents that are, one parent is non-accompanying and the other parent wants to travel to Canada with the kids. So Canada is a signatory to the Treaty on International um, Anti-Child Abduction Laws, and so we have to make sure, government officials have to make sure that if you only have one parent traveling with the kids, that the other parent has properly consented to those children being removed from the jurisdiction. And usually there needs to be some sort of accompanying, like if you're divorced, some sort of accompanying court order or custody arrangement and parentage showing who has the ability to travel with the kids. And then hopefully also that other non-accompanying parent has also signed a consent letter, an authorization to travel abroad. And immigration has, or I guess actually it's through the federal government, not specifically immigration, but the federal government has a online form that is a template form that people can use for that purpose for the other non-accompanying parent to authorize the travel. But if there is a divorce or if there are ongoing custody issues, you also want to have those legal documents and any translations, if required, certified translations accompanying that.
And I think one other thing I'll add, which I think also kind of connects in with the question that Reshmi's asking. So I'm assuming that Reshmi listed her spouse as non-accompanying to get more points, if that was the case. And then the question becomes, okay, well, is immigration going to allow me to have my dependents as accompanying? And there's no restrictions on that. There isn't. When it comes to permanent residents, it is what it is. But you just have to be careful. I know I had questions yesterday, Alicia, where people were asking me um, if they could be in Canada and their spouse was also in Canada and then list them as non-accompanying. And that's something you got to be very, very careful with because, you know, I've seen some suggestions in procedural fairness letters of misrepresentation when people are saying, "Oh, my spouse is non-accompanying." So you have to be careful if they're actually with you in Canada. And as always, I encourage you guys to book a consultation with these tricky issues, especially with you, Reshmi. I encourage you to actually book a consult so we can sort through that. Okay. Okay, so Steel Cycling says, "Hi, Mark. Can you speak about Canada's immigration plans for the next 3 to 5 years? What can prospective immigrants expect?" What does your crystal ball say, Alicia?
Well, I mean, I had a couple consults this morning, and one thing that I am seeing are a lot of study permits getting refused. And so I do kind of want people to be cautious about those study permit applications because it's a different world now than it has been in the past. And we have a very different situation because of the pandemic and because of the backlogs. And so you and I were talking about this too, Mark, that there's this large group of people in Canada who have completed their studies, are either done their postgrad work permit and are starting to lose their status. Oh, we might have lost Mark. We'll see. Oh, there he
I'm
comes back.
back.
Okay.
My apparently someone wanted to try to call me, so bear with
Ah,
me if this is rough and tumble. And it's actually, yeah, it's the car dealership where I've ordered a vehicle, which who knows? Maybe there's good news, or maybe he's going to tell me it'll be 5 years, which is okay because you try to save the money up and it gives me more time. So
yeah.
sorry about that distraction.
No, no. So study permits, I think, there's a large group of Canadian students right now and Canadian postgrad work permit holders. And some of those people, of course, are starting to come to the end of their status. And there has been the announcement of this new public policy where hopefully some of those people will be able to benefit from a new open work permit that's going to be valid for 18 months. But it's only if you've had your postgrad work permit and probably your initial postgrad work permit that was going to expire between January and December of 2022. And otherwise, you might be out of luck. So, what that means for people who are applying from outside Canada right now is there are not a lot of really solid options to get to Canada, because the study permit applications are brutally adjudicated. They're using, of course, the data analytics to screen people out like crazy. And then because there haven't been draws yet under Federal Express Entry, there's a big backlog, right? So what are your options? You've got to learn French. You've got to find a Canadian employer who's going to go through the LMIA process in most cases, um, or you have to have perfect language scores and probably make sure that you've upgraded your education.
Okay, as I was scrolling down here, it's always interesting because there's always a lag when we're doing this. So when the comments are posted, I don't see them instantly. It takes a little bit for it to circle around, and usually by the time when I'm doing it myself, I don't have the opportunity to pull up comments in real time. So I'd asked Raman what the weather was like in Vancouver, and he said here it's very, very beautiful. Very blessed to live here and lucky to join with you guys. Well, we're grateful to have you. And then yesterday, Alicia, George, one of my alumni, who is a full permanent resident now, I forgot and got him confused with Thesura, who is now in Canada, which I'm so happy for him. He says he's joining from Toronto today, came here on his study permit last week. Hope you're doing fine, Thesura says. And yes, so Thesura was also an alumni of the Canadian Immigration Institute, the Express Entry course. And so it's awesome to have you here, Thesura, and you're moving forward. And Thesura is the last one of the pre-2021, I think it was, right in that range, the 2021, the last draws that happened that was able to connect in and take that course. So I'm happy to see that you're here. Okay, let's jump to another question. Okay, let's see. Fred says, "Hi, Mark. Wanted to drop by and say thank you for all the Q&A sessions that you do. Today marks the end to my journey to being PR. Got my e-Cobra today and waiting for PR card under CEC AOR October 29th. That is fantastic. And I think, yes, I do have. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Oh, I better turn up the volume on that one. I guess we'll get I've got the sound effect turned off here. Okay, let's try this again. This is rough, you guys, but we'll still get the basics of it. Okay, and that was pretty loud. So, all right. Congratulations, Fred. You know, I think, Alicia, I can probably speak for you as well as myself. This is designed to help you guys realize that we can actually provide competent legal representation when you are applying for your applications, that there's actually value to what we do and that we can help you as you're navigating your way through immigration. So that is obviously to get clients is one of the reasons we do the live Q&As, without a doubt. You know, we want you to retain us. We want you to book consults. We want you to take the courses. Why do we want you to do that? Because we know that you will benefit significantly from it, and you can avoid some, but not just the common pitfalls, but the real pitfalls, because we have a chance to connect with you. But another reason that we do this is to give back. And we see so many people out there that are trying to navigate their way through, following these generic, WhatsApp groups or, forums or whatever it is, wherever you're getting your information on Canadian immigration. And there's so much of it that is just wrong. And why is it wrong? Because often there will be subtle changes in the law, and people who have immigrated themselves and then feel like, hey, I'm an expert, I can tell everyone how to do it. Well, the reality is you can't rely on what happened even yesterday sometimes to determine what's going to happen going forward. And so there may be all these resources that have been in existence for a long time, but they never update. And so then people rely on old, outdated information or directions, and they rely to their detriment. And when you rely on some nameless, faceless forum and some, Raman 12346 whatever as your immigration advisor, or George in the case of my the video that I did with Ask Me Anything, that immigration help desk video. There's no recourse. There's no one that you can go back. And if Alicia and I give you crappy advice, well, and it's wrong, well, then we're liable because we are professionals and this is what we do. And, well, fortunately, we haven't had too many occasions where things have gone south. We're definitely not perfect, but we definitely do our best. So just a little comment to those who are watching. Okay, let's jump to a next question. Okay, and this is one we brought up before, the caregiver stuff, Alicia. And neither Alicia nor I do a lot of caregiver work, but there's a reason, because it's a freaking gong show. But Jose says, for the current caregiver program, is it required a job offer? And can the spouse and dependent child, can they come right away upon submitting the application? And this is kind of a question that's built on the past, right? I don't know if you want to tackle that one, Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, so the problem is it depends on which caregiver program. So really, there's no new applicants who are coming from outside Canada that can apply. So it's only if people are currently in Canada and they have been working under the caregiver program and they have a valid work permit under the caregiver program. And there's a few different ways to have a valid work permit under the current program. If you have a new employer, yeah, they do have to have, at any rate, you have to have a job offer if they did an LMIA, but they're not going to issue a work permit in Canada unless the applicant is already in Canada with a valid work permit. So for most circumstances, you will need a valid job offer, but I don't know if you've already applied, if you already met the requirements for the 2 years of experience already, or you have yet to meet it. There's a lot of issues with this program, and I have heard, we've been looking at postings from other lawyers across the country that those applications haven't even moved in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it is not good, not good at all. Okay, next question is from Benaz, and Benaz says, "Can you please explain how gift deed and how it should be done from outside Canada in a way it is accepted for FSW?" And this is just the beginning, you guys. So we've had a lot of questions, coming from people within Canada because things have stalled out outside. But come July, things are going to open up again, and so now is the time where you start arranging your affairs. Now is the time when you start thinking about express entry and the things you need to do to be ready now. And I want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you hit the bell notification when we have these live videos, because we will be releasing a series of steps to help you get prepared so that you're ready come July. But what I want to do, and if I can, hopefully this will work here, I want to flip over here, and in response to this question, I think everybody knows now that we have the Canadian Immigration Institute has an express entry course. And I want to show you guys what we have here. So these are all the different courses that we have. Open this up. In Module 6, and I know this is a little bit tiny, but hopefully you guys can see this. In Module 6, we have a separate video for just about, well, for every document that you require. And if we go to page 2 here, you'll see that there's a proof of funds section. And in the proof of funds section, what we have here is sample documents, including a gift deed sample. And you're asking about outside Canada. So basically what we've done is we've taken documents, and I will see if this will open up. It might. Beautiful. Okay. So this is a real example that we've redacted of someone who's used a gift deed from outside Canada. And so we have samples of these documents that are available, as well as within the nature of the course and the instructions here, we talk about a ton of things to help you get ready, including what needs to be within a gift deed. And I don't know, Alicia, if you want to try to tackle at least the basics of it, but essentially your job is to prove that that money is yours and it's not a loan, and that it came from someone that is actually giving you the money, gifting it. And I've told people repeatedly, Alicia, that family, yeah, they can give money, close family, but friends don't usually give you $20,000 to settle in Canada. So I'll turn it over for your perspective on that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've talked about this already, Mark, but they have updated the proof of funds figures. And so this is something that people really need to be aware of. So if you have your express entry profile sitting there and you're looking at federal skilled worker, then be aware that immigration
Oh, oh, dang it.
required.
Sorry, Alicia, I lost you for a second there when I switched the screen. So could you repeat that right when I switched the screen?
Sure. Yeah, just every year, immigration is going to slightly increase the amount of settlement funds based on the rate of inflation. And so there's a notice on immigration's website. If you have a federal skilled worker profile sitting there, then you need to update your profile no later than June 8th, 2022. So, we've got a little bit less than a month right now, but these figures have increased, right? They've increased by,
Oh, sorry.
a
Yeah.
couple $100s.
Yeah. Usually I find that it's, right around $700, $800, like just under $1,000. It seems like it increases. And like Alicia said, look at the date, yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah. So you need to get on this quickly to make sure that you have those settlement funds in your account. And if those settlement funds were because one of your family members gave you a large lump sum or a few large lump sums of money, then you will want to have gift deeds to show, okay, who was giving you that money? Here's where it came from their account. Here's where it goes to your account. And this is purely a gift. It's not a loan. There's no interest due. There's no repayment owing. It is purely a gift for you to use for your settlement in Canada, and it's an outright gift without repayment obligations.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And then one thing I wanted to also share with everyone is that the Express Entry course, in the past, what we've done, keep wanting to use my Stream Deck, which doesn't exist here. I have to do this manually switching. But within the Express Entry course right now, what we've done, you can see here, the last one that we just completed, the 25th to the 29th, is here. However, what we have done is we've decided to leave this open so that individuals can subscribe now. And then once we have sufficient numbers, then we're going to open up the master class. So right now you can access the Express Entry course. Although it says April the 25th to the 29th, we'll update that today. You can actually go in and you can purchase the course now, and you can have access to all of those materials. And you can, if you scroll down on the main page and there's links to the CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com right here, you can see how comprehensive this is. Over 642 minutes is basically 10 hours of on-demand content, and you have access to all of this, all the templates, the checklists, how to complete the EAPR portion if you get an ITA, but more importantly, completing your Express Entry profile, understanding how to increase your chances of getting an ITA. All those things are embedded within here. And then the masterclass is kind of like this massive bonus where you can come in and ask me anything that you somehow may not find within the course here. And so you can go in right now, like I said, and you have the ability to register and get access to all of it. And then literally within the next month in June, probably the end of May, we'll probably do another one. I also want to let people know we don't have as many spousal questions right now, but we have opened up the spousal sponsorship course as well. And instead of doing May 9th to the 13th, we didn't have as many people register. And it's really better when we have a large group. So we've extended that 2 weeks. And the masterclass for the spousal sponsorship course will run the week of the 23rd of May until the 27th. So I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of notice about that. And it's all can be found on the CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com website. All right, let's jump into some more questions here. Okay, so this individual here, I don't know, Alicia, do you know what their name is? Can you tell me what that is?
I cannot.
It says, hi, good to see both of you today. How long does it take from additional document request to passport request? Express Entry FSW Outlander. So what has your experience been, Alicia? Have you had any recent interaction with this?
I haven't had clients who've had additional document requests recently to be able to say, okay, here's a real-time timeline. But as long as it's just a general additional document request update, and nothing has gone a little bit interesting in your life, you don't have new dependents or you haven't gotten divorced or married or new babies. But one thing Mark and I always talk about is, if you're getting additional document requests, that always sends off some alarm bells in our minds, at least, to say, why are you getting additional document requests? And so often they want to have that Schedule A background declaration 5669 And there's a lot of minefields in that form, right? That's your full personal history, it's your full address and work history, and it's all those statutory questions that they will try to nail you on if you made a mistake and forgot about a visitor visa refusal way back when. So be very, very, very careful to make sure that there's nothing in your application that would be causing an officer concern such that they're making this request.
Yeah. And I can share a personal experience. So I have a client that I've been working with who received an ADR request. We had done the initial, let's see, I'm trying to remember. No, I don't think we did the initial one, but I had a consult with him. And then after that consult, he'd received a previous document request. So his application's been in the queue for a while. And for whatever reason, he didn't look back at his original Schedule A and was requested to provide a new one. And when he provided the new one, the information he put in that one was not correct. And then he realized, oh no, I forgot to include this one entry. So then he sent a third Schedule A. So the first Schedule A, then a second when they requested it. Then he proactively submitted a third one to correct it. And then now he's received a fourth request because it's been about a year later. And guess what? All of them are different. And
Oh no.
so from 1 to 2 to 3, there were things that he didn't even realize that he had screwed up. And so you can imagine the time that it has taken to try to go back and what do you say? How do you figure this out? How do you reconcile the fact that you said your school started on this day and it ended on this day, and then in your next subsequent Schedule A, where you've attested everything is true, complete, and correct, it's not. And so sometimes people are fairly casual with these things, and this is something I know, like Alicia, we've talked about a lot. An additional document request can be a sign of danger, and it may just be like many, many FSWs now, they just want an update as to what you're doing. But it also can be an opportunity. And so we strongly encourage people to connect with us, and we offer a service where we can review, because even if they haven't specifically identified something outwardly, like on the surface, there's a difference between an additional document request and a procedural fairness letter for sure. But there is nothing preventing an officer from then looking at your Schedule A, the new updated one, matching it with the previous one, and realizing, oh, I missed that in the beginning. I should have actually dug deeper into this because there's a clear inconsistency here. And what's the consequence? In the worst case, misrep. 5-year
Yeah.
bar, dream of PR, gone. So that service that we offer is as much proactive as it is defensive. We go on the offensive. If they don't specifically identify any problems, we look, make sure there isn't any, and if we find them, we proactively correct them for the officer before they even get a chance to look at it. And sometimes people do get those procedural fairness letters where they specifically state, you said this in this form and you said this in this form. Why? I think maybe you've misrepresented yourself. So
Yeah.
it's important not to treat these ADRs as just some casual thing that you just respond and the next thing is you're going to get that PPR. And I think generally, Alicia, I tell my clients 1 to 2 months when they get that, just because of the volumes. But remember, the minister is frantically working to cull the backlog. That's all of you Outlanders, you FSWs that have been stalled out by July, so they can start the new rounds of invitations and try to better meet the service level standards that they are supposed to, those 6-month standards.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. So Reshmi confirms, yes, it was PR. So I think we've satisfactorily answered that. Okay, we've got a bunch more that have kind of piled in here. Reshmi looks like she's got some more. Okay, my ex-employer who wrote my reference letter has left the company. Can that be a problem? I'm in India. He has left for the US. And okay, so there's the first question. So Alicia, do you want to try and tackle that one?
Yes, I'm assuming she's doing an express entry application.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, and I'm assuming it's a federal skilled worker if she's in India. So, Rashmi, yeah, you do want to make sure that if immigration is going to contact your employer, they will contact somebody who can knowledgeably speak about what you did in what you claimed as your knock and your job duties for that occupation. So make sure that if your main contact or your direct supervisor has left, then you can get that person to write a personal letter or, a follow-up letter saying, I've subsequently left the company. Here's my new employment location. I was the direct supervisor or employer for Reshmi from this period to this period. I confirm that these were her job details. So make sure that you do have the original letter on company letterhead. Make sure that you do have your pay slips and maybe tax returns to back up the fact that you were working there in the job that you claimed. But if you know that the key person has left, you'll also probably want an updated letter from that key person with their updated contact information directly.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll add as well is that you want to circle back with the company and just let them know that the previous letter signed by the person that's no longer there, make sure that they have a copy of it. Say, here's the letter that this person, signed off on, and these are my duties, and I just want to make sure that if immigration does happen to reach out, which is extremely rare, you guys, but if immigration does happen to reach out, that someone is there, understands the situation, and can answer the questions. And in some cases, I'll even consider, if the company is amenable to it, getting an updated letter with a new supervisor signature and just add it in through a web form if you're kind of in that stage of EAPR. So there's a number of ways of doing this. There isn't any one right way. It really depends on the situation. And obviously you have to demonstrate, you have to be able to prove. And if the person isn't there and they call and no one can attest that you actually worked there, that's a problem. So you need to be proactive with that. Okay, Reshmi's got a follow up. Can I put 80% of my proof of funds after ITA showing as gift deed? So is there any limit to how much funds you can use for the purposes of a gift deed once you get that invitation to apply?
I mean, hopefully you can show that you've saved up some of that money and you have it accessible in your account, and they do want to see that you have that available for 6 months, right? That's kind of a making sure that that's not just being parachuted in at the last instance. But if you had to get a mom or dad to give you that gift deed and provide those extra proof of funds because maybe you're separated from your spouse, then you can do so. They don't put a limit on it, but it still needs to be reasonable that that amount is accessible to you and it is legally yours. You're entitled to the benefit of that money.
Yes. All right. Next question is from Zana. And Zana says, Hi, Mark. Based on GCMS notes, there's no activity on my profile since 2 months ago. I passed eligibility, security, criminality, medical. Just info sharing is in progress. Any ideas? Help me to do. And then let's see if there's a few other follow-ups. Details for info sharing shows it's ready to be assessed. And yeah, so that's kind of the basics. So this is one of those speculative things, and anything related to processing times, you guys, is just right now it's a gong show, and we as immigration lawyers, it's all over the map, and it depends on your location, depends on the visa office you're going through. Those are as important as anything, and the country, obviously, when things are stalled out, if there's background checks or things like that they're doing that are in progress. All of those things play a role in the delays. But Alicia, do you have any thoughts on just info sharing is in progress, which
Yeah. I mean, it also, so info sharing would be them looking to see sharing information with other countries where you have resided, or maybe you've had to do police background checks for countries where you've lived in for more than 6 months. And if any of those countries have processes that take a little bit longer in terms of information sharing with the Canadian government, that's going to influence the time that it takes for Canada to be satisfied that the info sharing has occurred. Each of those countries, they can tick off the boxes and they can proceed to finalize your application. So it really depends where you've lived, where you've traveled, where you've gotten police certificates from.
exactly. Okay, this is from Yasser, and Yasser says that's an awesome little photo there. I love that. Mark, I'm planning to take a reference letter from my current employer now, but I will be filing my PR application after completing my master's in Canada. Will IRCC accept a 2-year-old reference letter?
Hmm. Some people do this, right? So they know that they are switching jobs and they know that they'll be applying in the future, and so they try to get that reference letter now because they don't know if the employer is going to give it to them in the future, especially if they've left the company.
Yeah,
So get what you can, right? If you
yeah,
can get that letter now and you know that somebody's there who's going to be supportive of it, and they may not be there in the future, and you may move on. And if you move on, they may not want to write you a reference letter anymore. So if that's all you can get, then get it. If it is possible to update it in the future, then great, maybe you can do that. But at least it's better to have something concrete now than not to have anything at all.
okay. This question is from Nirav Singh. Nirav Singh. Not bad. Hi, I'm a CEC Outland and just got married 4 months ago. I've noticed IRCC. Oh, I've notified, I think is what what's being said here. I've notified IRCC, but no response yet. I've already received my passport request letter and my medical is expired on April 21st. Should I wait or go ahead with PPR? So just got married 4 months ago. This is a question I am so glad that it was asked, Alicia, because the consequences between what direction you choose to go are astronomically awful. So
Yeah.
yeah, so please educate Nirav Singh here.
Okay, so there is a requirement, of course, that you have updated immigration if there's a material change in your family composition, which it sounds like you did. The problem is that if you've got your passport request letter, your medical's just expired, you cannot land. You cannot come to Canada and get your COPR signed off and finally land as a Canadian permanent resident if your spouse is not included in that application. Because if you land and your spouse is not declared and medically examined and included properly in your application at the time that you land, guess what? Your spouse is never, ever going to be considered a member of your family class for the future. So that would be the absolute worst result. So you want to make sure that your spouse is properly included. So I don't know when you said you notified IRCC, did you just tell them or did you also include like all of the documentation to show that it was a valid marriage? So your marriage certificate, your spouse's passport, your spouse's background declaration, IMM8, the fees, right, to include your spouse as part of your application for permanent residence, and then, making sure that you can prove it was a genuine relationship. Um, so that's another issue that comes up, especially so for FSW, you wouldn't have to, or sorry, for CEC, you don't also have to prove the settlement funds. You would if it was an FSW application. But there are a whole bunch of potential issues here depending on what you submitted so far to immigration. So you cannot land until your spouse is properly included.
All right, let's jump over to Facebook here. This is from Delphin. Hi, Mark. Can I consider 3 years my advanced diploma in architectural technology, even though I took it as a fast track? So
Yeah.
we've seen this come up quite a bit as well.
hmm And so check with what is written on your letter of acceptance from the school that you have gone to in Canada. So I'm assuming it's in a Canadian program. So making sure that you have that letter of acceptance and then also that you follow up with your institution, so college or university, so that you get some sort of completion certificate that documents the length of the program. And immigration is only going to give you credit. I'm assuming that you're asking about this because you're looking at a postgrad work permit, but maybe it's because you're looking at points for education. It's not clear to me. But if you are looking at it for postgrad work permit eligibility, you know, it's you really have to prove that you have met that full 2 years of the program duration in order to get a 3-year postgrad work permit. And some people try to compress their education and do it in less than the 2 years and then hope that they get it accredited for 3 years for the postgrad. If you're looking at this in terms of education to see whether it's equivalent to Canadian education, then make sure that you've got your education credential assessment. It has to be deemed to be equivalent through an education credential assessment. You can look at the list of organizations that IRCC accepts those ECAs through. And if the first one tells you that they're not sure, then talk to another ECA organization and see if they will view it as equivalent to a bachelor's.
Okay, here's a great question. This one is from Luz. And Luz says, hello, Mark and Alicia. If my TR to PR application is refused, is my open work permit that was issued based on that TR to PR still valid till the expiration date?
Mm. So that's an interesting question. I don't know if it has been refused or they're just asking in the hypothetical. Um, but there is a section in the regulations that says when your authorized status ends. And so that's what you're going to want to look at. So it's really important to determine whether it has been refused or whether you're just worried that it might be refused. But generally, the documents are valid until their expiration or until you have failed to comply with conditions for that work permit.
And this is also fits into the same context as someone who, let's say they've got a spouse on a spousal open work permit. And although it's rare, sometimes people will be worried if the principal applicant, let's say, is here on an international, like an intercompany transfer or something through the International Mobility Program, and a work permit, and the principal applicant loses their job or something, and then they're no longer able to work for that company, and it's an employer-specific one, and then their spouse is on an open work permit. We get a lot of questions. Well, if the one work permit, if the principal applicant isn't working, does it somehow invalidate? Or another example is someone who is studying, right? And the spouse is accompanying them to Canada and has an open work permit based on that, uh, the your status as a spouse of an international student. Well, if school comes to an end, or the person flunks out and they no longer can go to school, what becomes of that work permit? Well, those same principles apply when it comes to these. If there's a removal order becomes enforceable, or essentially the work permit expires, those are the two circumstances. So we don't know the full situation here, Luz, so we can't say yes or no with 100% certainty. But generally speaking, if you're on an open work permit and the permanent resident application, even if it's a bridge, gets refused, those work permits continue to be valid as long as you don't leave the country. If you leave the country and you're coming back in, then a border officer can refuse entry, and that doesn't confer you a right to return. So if you do or are in that situation, you definitely do not want to leave the country until you get things sorted out. Okay. All right, here's another speculative one from Malik. Alicia. Malik says, any chance of getting an ITA until December at 475? Should I wait as I will turn 30 in December, which of course then will drop to 470. So as I will turn 30 in December, study visa is a bit expensive for me.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody this morning and trying to do the calculus on this, right? Because it's a similar thing where they're sitting in the 470s or, a higher 400s. But if so, I went over and I took a look at the express entry pool of candidates, right? So if you go over there, right now it's saying that there's 602 candidates in the pool that are above 600. There's almost 7,000 people between 501 and 600. Well, guess what? There's 51,541 people who are sitting between 451 to 500 in their CRS scores.
Yeah.
And so, when that pool opens up, I don't know if you have a magic CRS number in your mind, Mark, but here
It's
we
going
go.
to be
So
over
here's the pool.
500 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to scoop out, maybe about 5,000 of those 6,972. Maybe they would give the full invitation to the full 7,000 people in there if it's over 500. But a 475, it's hard to say how many people within that bandwidth are going to be in the high 475s. And if we look historically, it was hovering right around that mark before the backlog, right? So 468, 469, 472. So 468 was probably the lowest it
Yeah.
has dropped. So
Yeah.
you're right kind of on the cusp there.
Yeah. And I think as you look at this also gives you an idea of how many, like how large. Well, the largest no program specified draws really at the end of 20, let's see, when was this? The end of, oh, I went a little bit too far here. At the end of 2020, when they were really trying to extend a lot of invitations, it got up to 5,000. And then we know also from CEC, as they were going through the Canadian Experience class, they were hovering right around six or so for quite a while before they ultimately, let me just backtrack a little bit here. And I talked about this yesterday in my live Q&A. But if you look at the Canadian Experience class, and we'll go one more back here. I'll just sort this. Just give me a second. If you look at the Canadian Experience class itself, there we go. They got up as high as 6,000 at some points. And of course, we're not talking about the crazy February 13th draw, right, where they extended invitations to 27,000 people. But generally speaking, when you're starting to do the math and try to sort out, okay, well, if this many people are in the queue, how long is it going to take? Like realistically, in the best of circumstances, if they were doing large draws, you're looking to September or even October before it gets down even into the 480s. So that's
And then
at least,
keep in mind more people probably pile in once it
and
opens.
once they know, more people are going to be piling in. Now, how many have been able to learn French in by that time, the almost 2 years that the federal skilled worker has been paused? Who knows how many francophone speakers are like, this is sweet, I want to do this, and I'm happy to live somewhere other than Quebec. So all of those things are factors that we speculate and we do the best we can. And I know how important it is for you guys to know, because you have to make life decisions based on it. But the one piece of advice, and I know Alicia does this all the time in her consultations, the same as I, whatever decision you make, try to make decisions that keep as many options open for you as possible. And that's what we discuss in our consultations. And usually in that 25-minute consultation that you have with our firm, we can at least point out where you're going to close doors for yourself or where you can leave them open, and how to prepare yourself at least to keep as many of those options open. And sometimes that's all you can do. And in other cases, we often advise our clients to never limit yourself. And if you have multiple options, then pursue everything that you have available, which is not good for immigration because it duplicates files. But when individuals can't trust that things are going to move forward in a measured, predictable way, then you have to pursue every option that's available to you. And I have to imagine, Alicia, that of all permanent resident applications, at least 30% are duplications. And that's probably maybe even, people that applied through the TR to PR pathway and applied through CEC and applied through a PNP. So until immigration gets their act together and gets it sorted out, I will continue to advise my clients to pursue everything, because there's no guarantee with nothing. All right, let's jump back here. And let's jump into some supers. So here, this question is from VS, and VS says, can I apply for a tourist visa basically to sit the barrister exam with the Law Society of Ontario as an internationally trained lawyer from India? So I'm not sure,
No.
I'm not sure if, maybe I'll jump in on this one, Alicia. Yes, if you need a visa to come to Canada to do whatever, yes. But I don't think you maybe understand how this works. Um, it's not just a simple matter of coming and challenging the barrister exam. There's a whole lot more associated with it. So I'm not sure, VS, if you've actually done the research to figure out exactly what you need to do. It's definitely not just sitting an exam. Yeah, Alicia, do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so the problem with these is a study permit required, because immigration says that anything that requires an in-person exam generally also requires a study permit. And so be very, very careful, because if you have done your research and you know that this is what you have to do, um, and you've talked to the law societies and you're trying to figure out exactly what the procedures are, in some circumstances, immigration says, well, if there's an in-person exam component, it's actually studies in Canada that requires a study permit. So just be super careful.
And on the study permit front, Shawshank asks this question. He says, "Hi, any idea how much time generally does it take for the withdrawal of a study permit application? I applied for withdrawal on the 7th of April, no response since."
I've seen a few crazy scenarios with study permits and withdrawn requests for study permits within the last few months. Um, there was one person who had applied for their initial study permit, decided to switch programs, withdrew the first study permit, submitted the second study permit, made sure to withdraw it a second time on the first application, then decided, well, you know what? Maybe I will pursue the first application because immigration never saw the two withdrawals and actually sent the approval letter requesting the passport. So it it seems like the Wild West out there right now. I don't think the web form inquiries are actually getting properly matched to the files in any sort of timely fashion. So it causes mass confusion. So you can do another web form request to say that you're confirming the withdrawal, but you might get into a funny situation if you've also submitted another application for a study permit. So just be cautious about that too.
Okay, let's see. Next question. All right, this kind of is a continuation of our discussion about ADRs. So David says, I applied for a federal skilled worker in April 2020. So in May 2022, I got a request for updated financials, medical, Schedule A. Is the Schedule A being asked because of the 2-year delay in processing? So this is kind of a
Maybe,
continuation. Mhm.
maybe, right? It could be because they're saying, well, what have you done in the last 2 years? And they want to make sure that you still meet the settlement funds. And if there's been a change in your job or a change in where you're living, then that's something that they'll want to follow up and check. So, yeah, it might be because it's been such a long delay in terms of processing and they just want to, clear out their backlog right now, but it might be that they have some other concerns about do you still meet those settlement funds requirements?
Here's an interesting question from David. He says, is there any preference on express entry for new people versus people that have applied in the past? Or any points punishment if I applied for multiple years? Now, I'm assuming that David has not received an invitation to apply. I'm assuming that
Mm,
it's a profile that has not received an ITA. If obviously if we assume if you had a past refusal for something, then well, that's going to play a role. If you had an EAPR that was, you know, that was refused for various reasons, including misrepresentation. But just from the straight insertion of a profile, Alicia, do you think is there any effect on that whatsoever?
No, there's no points punishment, right? If you put a profile in there 2 years ago and it expired, and then you put another profile in 2021 and it expired, and you're putting another profile in, they're not going to dock you points because your profile keeps expiring. Um, but of course, Mark's right. If you had something refused, like they gave you an ITA and then it was refused, your application was refused for some reason, then that would be something that you would want to address.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Peter Tim. So Peter says, "Hello, Mark. I'd like to know when do the OSC Operations Support Center work on applications? And if an application is promoted, is it a sign that the person will get approval?"
These are the internal machinations of immigration and who's working on which files when and in what time zone, right? And this kind of a brave new world because it used to be that we had officers in Ottawa, we had officers at Fagerville, we had officers at particular processing centers. But increasingly, things are getting moved around, files are getting moved around all over the world to wherever the officers are who have capacity to review those files. So I don't know, Mark, if you have any
Mm.
opinions on when the OSC officers are working.
No, we don't. I don't, Peter. Yeah, like I said, what they're doing right now is they're trying to leverage every ounce of their processing, the global network, to work through these massive backlogs. And so we're seeing applications being processed in locations that we've never seen them before. I know there was a backlog of PR applications in Winnipeg, right? And people were complaining because if their files were submitted to the Winnipeg processing office, they were stalled out and they weren't going anywhere. And I remember explaining to people, look, these are officers who've never touched an express entry, and now they're being forced to do it. So yeah, they're probably in the midst of training, learning the ropes to be able to process. So the officers are being forced to be jacks of all trade, let's put it that way. I think no longer are officers just one-hit wonders where they just process visitor visas. And we know that, right? Because the TR to PR pathway, initially when the borders were closed, it was those visitor visa, the overseas officers who traditionally handled visitor visas that were then being reallocated to work on the TR to PR pathway. So, it's like anything. It's like even you take an immigration consultant or an immigration lawyer who only does one type of thing, only does LMIAs, and they don't do anything else. Well, they're not going to be as well. They're not going to be as proficient as someone who maybe has experience in a number of other areas. And on the flip side, someone who only does one thing becomes pretty good at it. So that's often why we see sometimes refusals that don't make sense, that are just wrong. And we're not even talking about Chinook or the advanced, analytics that IRCC is using now to process applications. And if you haven't watched the video that Will Tao and I did just recently, go to the YouTube channel and search for IRCC Advanced Analytics, and you'll see that video that we did with Will Tao. You can also listen to it as it has been released as a podcast episode for those who are watching the Canadian Immigration or listening to the Canadian Immigration podcast as well. Okay, this question is from Addie, and Addie says, we have a spousal open work permit, study permit, and visitor visa rejection from last year. Okay, I think they're outside Canada. And now my company is planning to sponsor my intercompany transfer work permit filed with a spousal open work permit for my wife and kids' visitor visa. The follow-up is, will the previous rejection have any negative impact on the new ICT request?
Yeah, and Addie, it sounds like you've got a bit of a complicated situation, and I would say, it might be worth getting some
Yeah.
individualized advice on this. But you do have to be careful because even if you have a letter of support and an offer of employment from your employer, and they're going through the International Mobility Program and the employer portal, and they're doing that ICT transfer for you, you still have an obligation to prove that you meet the requirements for your work permit. And one of those requirements is that you have a valid temporary intent. And so I don't know the circumstances for why you had all those refusals in the past or if they were all part of one application. But if you have past refusals, it it goes to your temporary intent. And so immigration, whichever officer is going to get that file, is going to look through that past history, compare what was said, what was done, why you got refused in the past, and look at what your current circumstances, whether you're qualified for the job and whether you can prove that at the end of your authorized stay, you'll go back to your country of nationality.
All right. This is from Little Explorer, and the question is, suggest something for Outland applicants. I'm just gonna just slide over here and just hit that bell. So we'll continue on, but that bell means you need to book a consultation. Suggest something for Outland applicants. My CRS is around 350 and trying to get job offer letter, but since I'm an Outland applicant, not able to get interviews. Any suggestions?
These are tough situations. And I mean, a CRS of 350, it's not gonna get an ITA. And you either need to learn French, you either need to have a study permit approved if you're upgrading your skills and are able to prove that you have, a logical reason for studying in Canada and move to a PGWP, or you need to get that job offer from a Canadian employer. And one of the main things to do that's like a zero cost option is to go on to Job Bank, and they have a job match. And so you can't get a plus account if you don't have a Canadian work permit and a social insurance number, but you can do just a regular job match profile where at least you can put your profile in there. But you're right, it's highly unlikely for Canadian employers to be reaching out to you unless you do happen to have exactly the skill set that they're looking for their employees.
I'm just going to flip over here. And I think many of you by now are aware of the fact that on the wholefeelaw.com website, our firm website, we have in our resource section blog posts. And often you'll find that the videos that we do that are very strategic and targeted have their foundation in a blog post that was originally submitted. And so if you look here and we scroll down, you'll see that Chanel Rosenbaum, she did a blog post on basically all you need to know about job offers in Canada. Now, this isn't like how to find a job, but this is just to help you avoid being screwed over. Basically, by being exploited or taken advantage of by someone who knows your desperation, who knows how badly you want to come to Canada, and who knows that your only pathway may be a job offer. And we see this type of exploitation all over the place. And so this is also, like I said, an episode on the Canadian Immigration Podcast as well, if you want to listen to it. But yeah, this is there's a ton of resources here, and I'll just point out as well, there's a ton of resources here on various topics, and this is growing and growing. And pretty soon we'll have another lawyer here who will be joining us, and we're just waiting for him to sort out things on his side before he joins us. And yeah, there's going to be even more blog posts coming here in the next little bit. So do know that we've got a lot of different options for you guys. There's obviously our live streams that we do here, but we've got blog posts. We have other videos that are more targeted versus the general Q&As that we have. So just keep that in mind. Okay, VS has a little follow-up, which says, thanks for replying. As per the Law Society of Ontario, you don't need a study visa to sit in the barrister exam. Study visa not required if you seek articling exemption. Okay, there you go. And I guess one thing we were just trying to, drill in is that don't just assume that it's okay. So make sure that you do your research, and hopefully the advice that you're getting from the Law Society of Ontario is accurate. Okay. All right, next question is from Sai. And Sai says, hello, Mark. My undergraduate is in petroleum engineering, but I have applied for a study permit for master's in industrial engineering. Will my application be refused due to mismatch in my education?
So there's a lot of factors that they look at, right? And there's some sort of decision-making matrix, and they don't tell us exactly what it is, but you do have to prove a logical connection between what you were doing in the past in petroleum engineering and what you want to do for your master's in industrial engineering. And they will look at, what were your marks in your petroleum engineering? What have you done since you graduated? Did you go directly from petroleum engineering and immediately to doing your master's in industrial engineering? If so, why? Why the switch, right? If you're doing an immediate change. If you've maybe been working in the meantime, then what is it in your career progression that shows a logical connection to now doing industrial engineering? So this is where when I do study permit applications with people, we look at, here are the reasons that study permits are often refused. And we have a very detailed study permit letter of intent and plan that we work through with people to make sure that all of this makes sense for your particular circumstances.
Yes. And I want to highlight, this is really, really important. Study permits, just like even visitor visa applications sometimes, are extremely volatile. And what I mean by that is you can do everything right. You can give them every single thing that the checklist asks for, and you can still get that study permit refused. We know that there are a massive number of international students who are transitioning to postgrad who are looking for permanent resident as an option. And there are simply not enough spots. And this is one of the questions that I've actually recommended we ask Minister Fraser when he comes to speak at our National Canadian Bar Association Immigration Conference coming here in June. And one of the questions that I'm hoping we'll be able to put to him is, what is your master plan? What is the plan for dealing with these massive numbers of international students? And let's face it, there's a reason there are so many. To a large extent, express entry plays a role in that. And the extra points and the need to have Canadian experience, either study, work, to get, high enough to get those ITAs. It's so competitive. So they're facing just astronomical numbers of study permit applications for people who are looking to use that as a pathway to PR, when traditionally it was always, yes, an option, but many people would come, study, and then take that education to go home and secure better job opportunities. But we don't know. We don't know other than what we see happening anecdotally. And now what we're seeing, and all of our colleagues across the country, immigration lawyers, we are seeing applications that are solid, rock solid, still getting refused, to the point where some of our colleagues are not even quoting just a study permit fee. They're saying, look, we'll file the study permit, but there's a good chance it's going to get refused, even though you are, for all intents and purposes, a great candidate and your intentions are all genuine. But we're also going to quote you and put into the quote the fact that if you really wanted to get approved, we're probably going to have to file a judicial review, which, in fairness, those JRs are highly successful because immigration is, there's even within their automated system, Chinook, or the advanced analytics they're using, we have seen reports of up to 20% error in refusal. That's on top of the officers just saying, I'm just going to refuse this, right? So
So,
keep that in
and the
mind.
hard, yeah, I mean, so guys, in the consults that I do, I don't always give you good news. Sometimes I give you terrible news. And I had a consult like that recently where somebody said, I got refused, and here are all the reasons. And I looked at all the reasons. And there are some reasons you cannot change, right? If you have siblings who are in Canada who are permanent residents or who are on their own study permits or work permits, that might be a strike against you that you're just never going to get approved for a study permit because immigration doesn't believe you have a temporary intent, and there's almost nothing you can do about that. And if you combine that with factors where maybe you're a citizen of a country in Asia, but you're working in the Middle East, because this happens all the time,
Mhm.
and you've been living there for a decade and your parents are there and everybody else is there, that happens often. And immigration almost always will refuse those study permits because they'll say that a lack of temporary intent to that Middle Eastern country and you don't have enough ties to your home country. And so if you've got too many strikes against you, don't go down the road of submitting study permit application after study permit application because they're going to keep getting refused forever. So, just be careful with study permit applications. They're super tough right now.
Yeah. And, sometimes when we do have to give bad advice, it's bad
Bad
advice
news
from the,
in our advice.
sorry, bad news, bad advice. When we give bad news or advice that our clients don't want to hear, um, there's tremendous value in that. Because sometimes knowing that Canada isn't an option for you is the best advice that you can get in those circumstances, so that you can then look at other plans. Maybe taking all of the thousands and thousands of dollars that you're spending on trying to repeatedly apply, retain other, consultants or lawyers or whoever to file applications that have an unbelievably low chance of approval. You can take that money and use it to better your situation in your home country or to explore another potential country. And it is becoming increasingly competitive to get into Canada, especially if you have no connection to Canada. And many, many people who, even like we've talked about this before, a master's degree, who are 29 years old, who have 3 years of skilled work experience and have English that is, even maximum English, are still in the 470s. And how long is it going to be for the rounds of invitations for no program specified draws to drop down to that? I don't know. The end of the year, if they start in July, and that's if no phenomenal candidates come in that speak, that have siblings in Canada and speak fluent French, and there's a lot of factors at play here. And the elephant in the room is whether or not they're going to take the position of adding in those occupations,
Yeah.
and yeah, so keep that in mind. But I think, Alicia, I think we're just about done. I want to just highlight Myra here. Myra has been wanting to post a question, but I guess Pakistan doesn't allow for super chats. Myra, I don't care about chats. I don't care if anybody puts supers or not. I looked for your question. You never posted a question. So just post a comment. It doesn't have to be a super. And so I'll give you just a little bit of time, Myra, if you're watching this. Post your comment and I'll watch and see if it comes through. And then Alicia and I will answer just a couple more questions and then we will wrap up because we're into overtime here. So let's see here. We'll jump to a couple others. Okay, and this is just a follow-up from Addie. So Addie says, yes, rejection earlier was for one single file where we applied as a family for study permit for my wife and a spousal open work permit for myself. Now this will be ICT application and visitor visa for my kids. Yeah, so I think we covered that one, Addie. And one thing I want to point out, when you're working with large companies and they've retained global firms, they don't care about you personally. And often it's all about systems and expediting and getting that work permit applied for through the same way they've done it for 1,000 other candidates. You must make sure that they're aware that you had a previous refusal. And sometimes that can get missed when the company just retains counsel and they're so used to doing it cookie cutter style that sometimes those critical details get overlooked, and then you end up with a misrepresentation finding, and you didn't even, obviously it wasn't your fault. So that's one thing that I'll just point out to watch. Okay, I'm still waiting for Myra here to post her comment. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so Jose says, hello, is there any part of the application forms that you need to indicate that you have refused for work permit before? If yes, what to input needed? Thanks.
Yeah. So take a look at, and it depends on what kind of application you're doing, but there's always a question. There's always a question that says, have you ever been refused a visa to Canada or any other country? And they'll ask that on the Schedule A if you're doing a permanent residence application. They'll also ask it in the statutory declaration questions if you're doing a work permit or a study permit application. And that's where you're going to say yes. Hi, Simba. You're
Yeah.
going to say, yes, I was refused a work permit before because, a lot of people don't read this question carefully. It says, any type of application. So visitor visa, study permit, work permit, refusal to Canada or any other country in the past. Yes, and provide the details.
All right. Okay, so I don't think we're going to be able to help Myra because I don't understand her comments. She said posted again and again, but but the comment is not posted. Oh, here it is. I found it. Okay, I found. Oh, actually, unless this is the same. Are you, here, buddy? You okay? We're gonna pull this one up here. Okay, I'm not sure if this is the same because it's coming. It's still an M. I'm a Pakistani and run an online fashion business. I've all proofs and presence on Instant, Etsy, but business isn't registered in Pakistan nor a taxpayer. Can I apply for self-employed persons under NOC 5243? I'm not sure if this is the question, but any thoughts on that, Alicia? It all
So,
comes down to proving it, right? It all comes down to
yeah,
evidence.
yeah. So you have to be able to satisfy an officer that you are self-employed if that's what you're claiming as your work experience. And it's problematic if you haven't been paying tax and if your business isn't registered and you don't have a license and there's nothing official saying that that's what you do. So um, I don't know. Sometimes you can get letters of recommendation from customers. You can prove bank account balances. You can provide, you know, pictures from your website. You can provide a history of what you've been doing. But if you don't have official documentation to back it up, it's possible that that IRCC officer is simply not going to accept your evidence.
And we've seen a number of situations within express entry where people have had circumstances occur that are outside their control and they weren't able to prove something, whether it was proof of education because the school burned down or proof of work experience because the employer, the business shut down and there's no one. And at the end of the day, the obligation is for you to be able to prove it. And if you don't have sufficient evidence, they're not just going to take an attestation. Okay, the last question here we're going to pull up is from Tamil Radio here. My LMIA work permit has been in backlog for 20 months. This is a good segue into what are the current IRCC processing times. So, what
Yeah.
do you think? Do you think it is India, maybe, or it is Tamil Radio here? So, let's see. Let's just pull up the processing times and see what we have. Which country should we look at, Alicia?
I'm well, maybe Sri
Sri
Lanka,
Lanka?
maybe India. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, let's take a look. And everybody can do this. So it definitely doesn't take a super chat. Okay, let's go with Sri Lanka. Okay, so if we take Sri Lanka, And then I click on processing times. Well, that's not horrible. It says 22 weeks.
No.
So I think this is one where I would book a consult. I'm always curious where things are with India. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Okay, so India is at 50 weeks. so, so this is, yeah. Any thoughts on what poor SA here can do?
Well, I mean, that is interesting. It hopefully that application was submitted before the LMIA, while the LMIA was still valid, because they used to be only valid for 6 months. They have increased the time on the validity of the LMIA applications, but the difficulty is now that, you know, that's good.
Oman.
Oh, oh,
Okay,
okay.
let's take a look at Oman.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
The difficulty is that even if you were to put in a new application now, you'd need to have a new LMIA from your employer because it will have been long expired by now, presumably. Um, 56 weeks.
56.
So I guess they're at, a little over a year, but that might
That's
have been
still,
backlogged in the past.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if your employer is able to go down the path of getting a new LMIA or to try to follow up with immigration. Yeah, it was valid when it was submitted, so that's good.
Yeah.
Follow up with immigration, and the employer can do a follow-up letter saying we really need this person working. So,
Oh, here's the reality right here. Here's the reality.
oh,
I missed that.
oh,
Owner operator.
yeah, yeah, that makes more sense then.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, we were looking at a double O knock rather than an owner
Yeah.
operator LMIA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. So yeah, as
So,
far as that one, yeah, owner operators, they've closed it, like they've canceled it, and so I have
yeah.
no. Does not surprise me at all that this has kind of been lost in the shuffle somehow, and I'm assuming you used a representative to help you. Um, what are they doing for you? That's my question. But we can, you can book a consult and we can look into this. I think that's probably the best solution. All right, and then of course this is it. This is the last one. So no more questions. Okay, so this one here, Sai says, I've had 3 different designations in the same company since August of 2018. While filling out my study permit application form in the employment history, do I have to enter all 3 roles, or only the latest one?
And again, Sai, this really depends on what you're going to do in the future. And if you are trying to look at express entry in the future, then you want to make sure that you are properly claiming each of your employment um, history sections. And so if you've been with one employer, yeah, you can put that one employer. But if you've had different NOC codes within that company and you can legitimately prove that you've met the lead statement and the majority of the main duties for each of those job descriptions and they have different NOC codes, then put each of those different NOC codes and put that the employer was the same employer, and you can get a letter from the employer to back it up, because you'll want to set yourself up if you're looking at doing a PR application in the future to prove that whatever you've said in the past matches what you're claiming in the future.
Exactly. All right. Well, we've got some groovy music here because I had to use whatever I had available. So we'll wrap up with some groovy music here. Thanks to everybody for your questions, and remember we're back always Wednesdays and Thursdays. Wednesday at 10 and Thursday at 11. Answer your questions on Canadian immigration. Thanks for connecting today, Alicia. Take care,
Thanks, Mark.
everybody.